Shady from Burbank, California. With Money in the Bank coming up, I had a thought about what if Money in the Bank had been around back in the 80s and 90s. Who do you think would have made for a good Mr. Money in the Bank, and what cash-ins would you have booked? Ted DiBiase would have been great with IRS carrying his briefcase, or perhaps DiBiase cashes in after Andre beats Hogan for the championship on the Hebner twins controversy, but we see Andre lay down because Ted had already paid him, and then DiBiase becomes the champion. Well, that would have been better than Andre just handing over the tag team title. And that's what he called it, by the way, not me. He called it the tag team title. Oh, Andre. But the problem with that, though, is then they would not have had a reason to vacate the championship and have that tournament at WrestleMania and crown, Macho Man as the new champion and all that. So that probably wouldn't have worked. I'll be honest with you, though. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm actually glad we did not have the Money in the Bank gimmick back in the 80s. There were far fewer title defenses on TV back then anyway, and the championships just generally meant more and just felt more valuable than they do now. I think the whole Money in the Bank concept, it can be fun. There could be really fun cash-ins and all that, but I just feel like it's sort of, I don't know, almost like bastardized the whole championship thing. I don't know. It's one of those ideas that I think it's a fun idea, but it can get played out. And, now they have, there was a point where they had multiple Money in the Bank matches just for the men, let alone, one for the men and one for the women makes sense at least. So I'm happy we didn't have Money in the Bank in the 80s and 90s. Having said that, the first person I thought of when I saw this question was not Ted DiBiase. It was Owen Hart. Owen Hart in 1994 would have been the perfect choice for the Money in the Bank briefcase. He beats Bret Hart, right? He beats Big Brother Bret at WrestleMania 10. Bret comes back later in the night, beats Yokozuna, wins the championship. It's right, exactly what happened. I would do exactly what happened. And let's say if King of the Ring in June comes along, instead of King of the Ring, it's Money in the Bank. Or maybe at King of the Ring, there's a Money in the Bank match. And instead of winning the crown, which really would make sense to have a tournament and a Money in the Bank match, but just work with me here. Let's say Money in the Bank happened in June. Instead of Owen becoming king, let's say he wins the briefcase instead. Now, Bret that night on that King of the Ring show had a title match with Diesel. Bret gets laid out, which I think is exactly what happened when the match was over, right? He got powerbombed, he got laid out. But let's say Owen comes out. Owen comes back out at that point. He cashes in on his brother to win the WWF title. That would have been something that the Owen Hart character at that time totally would have done. Yeah, you had Owen with carrying around slammies and all kinds of stuff, and I'm the King of Hearts. And that is absolutely something that Owen Hart character would have done back in '94. And cashing in on his brother to win the championship, that would have worked. And then he could just drop it back to Bret in the cage match at SummerSlam. I wouldn't change anything about the cage match at SummerSlam, but maybe Owen goes in as champion, Bret gets the belt back. I mean, you could work that, any number of ways. But again, when you mentioned, hey, if Money in the Bank was around in the 80s and 90s, who would be a good fit for it? The first thing I thought of, Owen Hart, 1994.